Please welcome Phyllis Schlafly.
Thank you very much, Ruth, and smart girls. I'm so happy to be in the presence of so many smart girls who are not only smart, but don't mind being called girls. Years ago, probably the greatest orator of his time, back in the 40s and 50s, was Senator Everett Dirksen of Illinois. And he used to open all his speeches by saying in his low, melodious voice, "Girls." And we didn't mind that at all. We liked him very, very much. And you have a wonderful group. Your speakers have been absolutely incredible, one after another. It was 40 years ago that I invited 100 women from 30 states whom I knew to come just a few hundred feet from this location here and meet me on the Goldenrod showboat right on the river, and invited them to join my organization, newly founded, and to go home and be leaders. We wanted to beat the Equal Rights Amendment, but basically my message was to be leaders in the political process because our country needs you. And it has fallen to our responsibility to be the leader to tell you how feminism has been such a destructive force in our society. I do a great deal of speaking on college campuses, and I talk on a lot of different subjects, but it is interesting that the speech I am most frequently asked to give on campus is a speech about feminism. The Women's Studies department always turns out. And feminism has been a hot topic. Every few years, Time and Newsweek asks the question, is feminism dead? But all of a sudden at the present time, feminism is something that they're talking about on the blogs and in the magazines and even in the pages of the Wall Street Journal. Perhaps one reason for this is Sarah Palin. You see it as one of the lies that feminism tells women is that women cannot be successful because they are victims of mean men in this society. And whatever you think about Sarah Palin, she is obviously a success. She's a success in politics. She's a success with a whole bunch of children. She's got a cool husband who supports her in what she does. But on top of all that, she's pretty. And the feminists just can't stand it. So they absolutely keep attacking her all the time. But it has made feminism subject that they talk about in the media all the time because the feminists do dominate the discourse about women in the media. And we need to be understanding about the lies that they tell young women. For example, this idea that women are victims. You know, the American women are the most fortunate class of people who ever lived on the face of the earth. I'm sure in other countries women are badly treated, but not here. However, whatever the current cause of the feminists is, women are portrayed as victims. In the 1960s, when they put through the unilateral divorce, because they used the word liberation. And what did they mean by liberation? It meant being liberated from home and husband and marriage and children. And then in the 1970s, it was the Equal Rights Amendment. They needed to be liberated from this terrible discrimination that was allegedly visited on women. And then in the 1980s, they demanded government-funded daycare as a middle-class entitlement because they thought one of the examples of the oppression of women was that society expects mothers to look after their own babies, and we have to lift that oppression from their shoulders and turn it over to the taxpayers. And then in the 1990s, it was their their domestic violence carried on. And you know, it is funny, after claiming that the sexes are completely interchangeable, they were never for equality. They were for selling the idea of the interchangeability of the sexes, and there is no gender difference. In fact, in the women's studies courses in the colleges, you are absolutely required to believe that God didn't make us in two different kinds. We really are the same. And the only differences you think you see are a social construct. It's because terrible parents give dolls to girls and trucks to boys. But when they come to passing the Violence Against Women Act, all of a sudden they do believe in sex differences, that women are naturally victims and men are naturally batterers. And so it is a very sex discriminatory law. And then in the Obama administration, they're for the Paycheck Fairness Act, which basically is to set up government commissions to give the jobs to women and not to the men. And you know, when Obama passed his stimulus bill for these shovel-ready jobs that didn't exist, the feminists had a little tantrum and went down there and demanded that the most jobs that were given to women. And they got the majority of jobs, although we know the majority of jobs were lost by the men. The best definition of feminism was given by a current feminist named Jessica Valenti, writing in the Washington Post. She wrote, "Feminism is an ideology based on the position that patriarchy exists and it needs to end." So the feminists really want to get rid of patriarchy and give us a matriarchy instead. You know, they have one conservative professor at Harvard University. His name is Harvey Mansfield, and he wrote a splendid book in which he identified the current women's liberation movement, the feminist movement, as they now call it. And he said, in fact, it is anti-men, anti-masculine, anti-marriage, anti-motherhood, and anti-morality. So it is amazing that any woman today would want to call herself a feminist. Now, this so-called liberation movement started with the Betty Friedan book in 1963 called The Feminine Mystique, in which she said that the homemaker, a poor soul, was living in a comfortable concentration camp. And that was, she was doing duties that were not worthy of an educated woman, and she should move out into the workforce. And the big mama of women's lib, who's the French woman Simone de Beauvoir, who's taught in all the women's studies classes, called the homemaker a parasite. Because she wasn't doing anything useful. And even Gloria Steinem, they haven't changed their views. Gloria Steinem just a few weeks ago said when a woman gets married, she becomes a semi-non-person. Of course, she didn't get married till she was, shall we say, rather elderly. And she said the only reason she got married was so she could put her boyfriend on her health care plan. Okay. All right, but the devaluing of the full-time homemaker has really become a part of our culture, and it is constantly reiterated on the media. And so that's why they don't talk so much about liberation anymore. They want to call themselves feminists. And the real thing that has made life so much pleasanter for women is not the feminist movement at all. It's all those wonderful labor-saving devices. When I got married, all I wanted in the world was a dryer, so I didn't have to hang my diapers on the line. And now you all have paper diapers. It's a different world. You can even get your cut-up onions at the grocery store. You don't have to slice your onions anymore. The Heritage Foundation printed a list of the 25 amenities that the people have who are assigned to the poor status as below a certain income level. And I read that list, and when I was growing up, I only had one thing of the 25 on the list. We did have a stove. We didn't have anything else. But we weren't claiming that we were victims. We weren't getting any government handouts. And it was my generation that grew up to be the greatest generation. But The National Bureau of Economic Research has reported that as women have gained more freedom, more education, and more power, they have become less happy. So they're not as happy as they used to be when they were in that comfortable concentration camp. Now, I have to point out that the feminists are not only anti-men, but they're very anti-masculine. And they don't want men to be manly. And this is why they have used their most ruthless feminists in the Department of Education to go after the getting rid of college men's sports. And they have made the colleges cancel hundreds of men's sports. And the ones that particularly irritate me are they have forced colleges to abolish 450 wrestling teams. Now, wrestling is a very masculine sport. And the feminists just can't stand it. And getting rid of the wrestling teams doesn't do anything for women. All it does is hurt men. My email box is filled with students from various colleges like Brown and other places. So can you please help us save our wrestling team? And this proves it doesn't have anything to do with equal spending of money. It's the cheapest sport in the colleges. All you need is a mat. And yet they're determined to get rid of them. So as several speakers have commented, feminism inevitably leads to big government because all of their problems that they claim they have calls for a government remedy. And of course, when they walk out on marriage and kick out their husband, they look to Big Brother government to be their provider. And the Obama administration knows this. One of his chief advisors, who was also an advisor to Bill Clinton, Podesta, who has his own think tank now. He's got 83 bills to channel money, taxpayers' money, to unmarried women. Because 70% of unmarried women voted for Obama for president. And they know where their constituency is. When you kick the men out of your life, you look to government to take the place and be provider. And we now have nearly half of our people who are getting all or part of their living expenses from the taxpayers. That means we've got a two-class society, people who pay taxes and people who vote for their living. They vote for the Democrats who will give them the biggest handouts. So that's what's going on in our country today, and that's another confirmation of the fact that you cannot separate the social issues from the fiscal issues. You have to ask the people who say they're concerned only about fiscal issues, what are we spending our money on? And we're spending it to support the broken families and the children who don't have any fathers in the home. Now, another one of the lies that the feminists tell is that they have created these opportunities that women have today. That is a bunch of nonsense. I've already mentioned how it is all the wonderful inventions and all the labor-saving devices that have made the difference in women's life. One time when I was in England, I bought a real functioning spinning wheel. And when our country was founded, after the women did all their daily work of cooking and washing and etc. In the evening, they'd sit down at the spinning wheel and spin the cloth to make the clothes. So I have that spinning wheel just to remind me of what it used to be before the American private enterprise system created all these wonderful inventions that have given us the highest standard of living in the world. And all this attack on our energy is to reduce our standard of living. Because when Obama said he wanted to redistribute the wealth, he didn't just mean from taxpayers to non-taxpayers. He means to the rest of the world. And that's what he's trying to do. And you know, we live in a society where we have single-family dwellings, which are heated in the winter and cooled in the summer. And the rest of the world doesn't have that. And this is because of our great supply of energy. And he's trying to reduce it. He said you can't keep your thermostat set at 72 anymore. Who is he to tell me I can't keep my thermostat set at 72? He wants to take away our light bulbs, the Edison light bulb, one of the greatest inventions in the history of the world. And his job czar has just closed all these American plants that make Edison light bulbs. The last one laid off 200 people in Virginia, and he's opened his plants in China. That's Obama's own job czar. He is creating jobs in China, not in this country. Well, I just want to point out that the feminists did not create all of these even educational opportunities. I worked my way through college and got my bachelor's degree in when was it? I've forgotten what. So long ago, I've forgotten what it was. it was 1944. That was before most of you were born, and. No problem. Washington University is just at the St. Louis, right here, a great co-ed university. And I worked my way through as a gunner, firing 30 and 50 caliber ammunition before it was accepted by the government during World War II. I worked half the time from 4 to midnight and the other half from midnight to 8 in the morning. And then I went to college in the morning. Competed with all the guys, no problem. I got my degree in 3 years, and then I went to the Harvard Graduate School. There was no discrimination against women. I competed with all the guys, got my master's in 1945. Where was the problem? Any of my classmates could have done the same thing if they had wanted to. I did it, and anybody else could have done it. Those opportunities were there. My mother got her bachelor's degree at Washington University in 1920. No problem. She competed with all the guys then. What's all the problem? It is just a big lie that the feminists created these opportunities. But I think we need to remember that attitude is everything. And if you wake up in the morning thinking you're a victim, you're probably not going to accomplish anything, whether you're a man or a woman. And we have the great opportunity to build the kind of life that we want to have. Now, when I was working my way through college, I had to take classes that fit into my work schedule. And that's when I got into political science and was fascinated with the whole subject of politics. So I've been a volunteer in politics ever since. I enjoy it. I think it's terribly important, because when the Founding Fathers said they wanted to leave the blessings of liberty to our posterity, that means you and me. They wanted us to carry on. And we need you to be involved in the process. And it's just so exciting to hear the speakers you've had here at this conference, and so exciting to see you smart girls who are willing to be active in the process, because that is what we need to make sure that our country can exist. We don't want to live in a country that is run by executive proclamations that Obama's giving out and by his bunch of kooky czars. Where did we get the idea? You know, he's appointed more czars than the Russians appointed in a millennium. And some of them are really kooky, too. You've got the one who said that the Mao Zedong, the champion murderer of all time, was her favorite political philosopher. Then you've got the one Van Jones who admitted he was a communist. Then you got the one who said he wanted dogs to have lawyers so they can sue us. And then the one who said that your body parts really belong to the government. So if you're in the hospital with a life-threatening ailment, the government can take your body parts right now and give them to somebody else who will find them more useful. And these are some of his czars. And then, of course, the ones who have been teaching the little kids. I hope you saw the thing on YouTube where the second graders were taught to sing new words to the battle hymn of the Republic that go like this. Hooray, Mr. President, we honor you today. For all your great accomplishments, we all do say hooray. Mr. President, you're number one. We're really proud of you. Heil Obama. Well, somehow I don't think that's what our second graders ought to be doing. And then the high school ones, they have training courses to invite them to join his Organizing for America so that they will be able to be brought into the political process to re-elect Obama. So it is true what he said, that he wants to fundamentally transform America, and he's doing it very rapidly. And that's why we need you and your energies working between now and the election next year. Now, so you'll know all about feminism, we're going to have a book signing of my new book this afternoon, I think right after this program, called The Flip Side of Feminism. It's particularly good for young women. But we invite you to get yourself trained and accomplished and dedicated to work in the political process. I invite you all to come to our Eagle Council, which will be in September in Washington. And we will have training sessions in how to grapple with these issues. You see, our leaders have been in this fight, as I said, for 40 years. This is our 40th annual Eagle Council. And you would like to associate with these state leaders, all of whom, like me, are volunteers in the political process. You'd like to know them and learn from them so that you can be an effective part of the political process. I did a debate with one of these feminists one time, and the moderator said to my opponent, she said, "I don't understand why you guys didn't win." He said, "You had all the prominent people, you had the presidents, you had all the political people, you had Hollywood, you had the money, why didn't you win?" And she answered, and I think it was a truthful answer. She said, "Well, it took us several years to learn how the process works." And we know in Eagle Forum, because we have had victories. Our victory over the Equal Rights Amendment is one of the most incredible proofs of how the grassroots can rise up and take over the entire establishment. 3 presidents against us, Nixon, Ford, and Carter. They ran their campaign right out of the Carter White House when he was there. They had all governors, some of them who walked the picket line against us. They had nearly all of Congress. They had 99% of the media. They had plenty of money, and we beat them all. And you can do that too. But you need to learn how the process operates. And so I invite you to come and associate with our Eagle Forum leaders who've learned how to do it and have accomplished great things at the state and national level. And I'll just remind you, our national anthem is different from every other national anthem in the world because it's the only one that ends with a question. And you're there to provide the answer. The question is, oh, that star-spangled banner will, does that star-spangled banner still wave, or the land of the free and the home of the brave? That's our question, and we need you to provide the answer. Thank you for coming to this conference.